Hello and welcome to UWO Now. I'm your host, Wendell Ray. Thanks so much for joining us for another conversation with a member of our UWO community. Each year, millions of Americans spend time at one of many amusement parks and theme parks across the country. Rides and attractions keep them coming. UWO graduate John Krajnak is president of 5 of them, and that includes Six Flags Chicago, Six Flags St. Louis, Hurricane Harbor in Chicago, Hurricane Harbor in Rockford, and Hurricane Harbor in St. Louis. And he is our guest here today to talk about the world of amusement. John, so thank you so much for coming by and talking to us today on UWO Now.
Thank you, Wendell.
So tell us, John, how does a kid from Wisconsin become the president of so many parks, famous parks in the Midwest?
It sounds tiring just hearing you say all those parts, but I graduated from Oshkosh too many years ago. But
Well, how did you? I guess I should ask you first. Excuse me for interrupting. I guess was your path to UWO, and tell us about your time here on campus, and then graduating and getting into your career at Six Flags.
Yeah, I kind of aspired to go down the business route, and in exploring colleges, I understood that Whitewater had a good accounting program, and it's kind of was my first interest was accounting, and Whitewater felt a little too close to home, which is Kenosha, and I looked a little further and looked into Oshkosh, and it felt right visiting both campuses. I got a little better feel for Oshkosh, and I took it was 2 years. Freshman, sophomore year was in the accounting program, and then it didn't feel that was my path for forever. That I'd be immersed in the numbers for the rest of my career, my full-time path. So I switched to marketing. And I that advice I gave to my own kids. I've got 3 now, one of which is heading to Oshkosh in the fall, actually. But I think that gave them some comfort to know that they see Dad and his long-term career, that I switched majors after 2 years, and I think it gave them a little bit of comfort to say, like, okay, I don't have to make this big decision right now, and it's okay to change and explore different options and that. Okay. But so marketing's where I landed. Graduated with a marketing degree, a minor in economics. I took a lot of sociology classes, some human resources classes, so I'd say I balanced it with the business side and the human side a little bit.
Okay.
That served me well, and just started looking for a job. I had a friend of mine who was interning here at Six Flags, and back then you're kind of looking everywhere. I had a number of people that say graduating with marketing, you're going to start in sales. And I said, I don't know that I want to start in sales. I'm not sure that's what I was interested in doing. But there was a position that was open in sales here at Six Flags. And I thought, well, selling Six Flags sounds kind of fun. So
Yeah, right.
Why not? So I sent in resume. And that's a different world nowadays than it is back then. That's finding the right paper stock to put it on and that, and got an interview down at the right? Yeah. People aren't going to know what that means nowadays, but I got an interview here, and that long interview process. I talked to 4 people in one day. I think I was here for 6.5, 7 hours, and got the job as a sales rep. And it'll be 30 years ago in a few months. And that was the start of the path here to in the theme park business.
Wow.
Yeah.
And
that was the start of it.
Running one amusement park has to be challenging. You've got the task of being over several and several well-known brands. Tell us, what are some of the challenges of running such a big event, big places that attracts so many people every year?
Yeah, it is. It's like running a city. It really is. It is. There's so many pieces. There's so many different groups to interact with. You're overseeing park operations, and that's when you get into daily operation. It's just that. It's every single day. And there are so many elements to that. The rides, the food and beverage, the shows. I've got a magnificent team. I believe in serving the team and taking care of those folks. And within that, that's kind of what is at the surface level of you understand about opening the gates and welcoming the guests. You're taking care of the guests, you're taking care of the team, and that's what goes on every single day. Within that, there are community relations. You're dealing with the safety elements of it. We have here in Gurnee police are on property every single day, making sure that people are behaving the way they should. We have EMTs for the safety aspect, which is our highest priority. There's team member challenges. It's making sure the park is staffed at the appropriate levels. Um, that's a number of folks' first job. I can't tell you how many folks I encounter that tell me I spent 3 summers there. It was a magnificent time. It was my first job. So we take that seriously as a responsibility. That this is a lot of folks' first experience in the workforce. So we don't take that lightly. That if that's their first time in the workforce, we want that to be a positive experience. That's where they develop habits as an employee. So as an employer, that's a responsibility to help them learn good working habits, good responsibilities as a young employee. So there's that. I come from a marketing background, so I'm still involved on the advertising side to an extent. I like to let them do their thing, but I can't help myself sometimes. There are emergency situations that come up. There are, it's remarkable the breadth of situations that arise. But folks kind of ask me, what's your favorite thing about it? How is it that you're in the business for 30 years? My go-to answer is after I talk about the people, because I so enjoy working with the team. But the job variety is such a close second. Is that it's always changing. You never know from day to day. You think you're walking in the door that you're going to do one thing, and it ends up being 7 different things.
I
It
can
changes from
imagine.
day to day, from week to week, from month to month, being a seasonal business. But then from year to year, there's always new products you're introducing. So the focus on the business changes from year to year. So there is no greater job variety than this business for sure. So it always stays fresh. I've had the blessing of working that variety in itself has been a blessing for me. So nothing has the opportunity to get stale. That's for sure. So yeah, it's remarkable.
You're listening to UWO Now. I'm Wendell Ray, and we're talking with John Krajnak, who's president of Six Flags Great America and 5 other Six Flags theme parks in the Midwest. Let me ask you about the COVID that we had just come out of. How did that impact the amusement park business, what you do on a daily basis, on an annual basis? Tell us about what that whole year was like for you.
Uh, I'd say without exception, nothing more frustrating in my 30-year career than that situation. It was in the safe space of your audience and in Wisconsin. Navigating and working with the state of Illinois was very difficult. I'm Wisconsin native. I'm born and raised. I work every day here in Illinois, but my goodness, the Illinois government was challenging to work with. Um,
How so? How so were they challenging? In what ways?
Uncommunicative. They were operating in the best interests of the residents. doing the best that they thought that they could. It felt to me that things got a little political,
Okay.
more so than maybe in the safe interests of the residents. But there were some challenges in inconsistencies in how they were applying some of their policies, and how some venues were allowed to open, we were not. We were demonstrating all of our safety opportunities, and we would get no response from them. We were taking some of their guidance and taking it to a higher level, and still not getting answers as to why we were not being allowed to open with even extreme levels of caution and safety beyond what they were asking, and still not being allowed to progress. So we followed the rules. We didn't go rogue, and we stayed shuttered. We kept everyone employed. We did not reduce staff. We did not cut pay. We didn't lay people off. And that was from the support of our corporate group, and that was positive. But we were able to open our doors and generate revenue, and it was difficult.
So COVID was a challenge for you, and I would imagine other parks. But I guess there were some things you learned as well about new things you could do at the park. Have some of those things that you implemented during COVID become standard operating procedure for you, for your parks? And what are they, if so?
Yeah, I think some of the precautions that we took then, I think some of the distancing things, that was, asking guests to distance, and that was challenging. We're talking about thousands of guests in an outdoor space. That has seemed to be unnecessary. But our cleaning standards and practices, I think that they've been elevated. They've always been. We take pride in the cleanliness of our park. So I think a number of those things that took us to another level, we've continued to adopt and move forward with. We put a mantra in place that we elevated our park to the highest standard of Six Flags, and our guest satisfaction scores were the highest in the company by cleanliness standards. So when we were putting those extra measures in place during COVID, we took those and embraced those and continued on as the cleanest theme park in the world, which we consider ourselves to be. So that's a pride measure that our team members embrace, and so it's important to the guests, and even more so now through COVID and post COVID, to maintain those cleanliness standards. So that is one thing that we're proud to carry forward, because it's so critical in the guest experience at the theme park. So keeping the rides clean, keeping the common areas clean, obviously the food and beverage areas, the dining areas, restrooms, all of it. So
were there challenges that were different at the water parks that you oversee? Tell us what those might have been.
Wendell, that was remarkable. It's one thing that I think the CDC kind of identified, that with chlorinated water, they didn't see the risk in water parks. So as a national standard, they generally indicated that water parks were okay to go. We got word from the state of Illinois then that water parks were okay to go even in, I believe it was mid to late June of 2020. And everybody had generally seen that as an opposite. So we were able to operate our water parks even by midsummer that year in 2020. So that was an opportunity, and we had to kind of mobilize fairly quickly to get them ready to go. And within, it was a matter of days that we got the water parks open and running. So we had our safety standards in place, and all the distancing, but the water parks were up and running. So it was good to see that we were able to offer some product and some fun experience, even in the difficult time, at some of our parks. So theme parks stayed closed, but the water parks were able to get going, and so we had something to give. And water parks carried on ever since.
Are you constantly in this industry? I would imagine it seems like a lot of the excitement, a lot of the buzz comes from new rides, new attractions. Are you constantly looking for the next thing? And what's that process like of introducing new attractions, new rides at a park?
Yeah, always. We're a mature product. We'll be celebrating our 50th anniversary in a couple of years. The park opened here in Gurnee in 1976. So just a couple of years away, we'll be 50 years. So it's important to keep it fresh. People are aware of us. They make their annual visit. So to have something new to offer for folks that have been coming here for 10 years, 20 years, 40 years, it's important to always have the new rides, the new products, something that they've heard of at another park, something that they have never seen or heard of, to keep the guest experience new and exciting is important. So the process is fascinating. There are a number of manufacturers in the industry that are competing for that new experience. They're pushing the envelope. They're coming out with that newest ride. There are a number of those virtual experiences that you might see down at the parks in Orlando, at Universal Studios, Disney. We are kind of more on the thrill side, the real experience, the coasters. So there's a number of the coaster manufacturers that can be a little taller, a little faster. Those manufacturers are getting into launch rides where you're launching these coasters and these trains as opposed to just continuing to go higher and there's only so high and steep and fast that the human body can handle. So they're trying to go with our Joker, for instance. You're flipping and rotating in the seat that you're sitting in. So the type of cars and vehicles that you're riding on can change the experience up. So there's a convention in Orlando every year that's hosted by a group called IAAPA, the International Association of Amusement Parks and Attractions. I think I nailed the whole acronym.
Sounds right.
I attended last year for the first time. It was fascinating because being in the business for 30 years and being at that convention for the first time was remarkable. I loved it. But they're all there. It's one of the biggest conventions in the country. And they're all there, and they're all showing off their newest thing. So the ability to meet with those vendors, to meet with all the coaster manufacturers and get to see the latest, the newest thing that they're putting together, their prototypes, and they're pitching it, and they're showing what can we do for you? What can we fit in your park? It's fascinating. I think it's what people that enjoy the theme park business and the experience, they dream about this role, about being the park president and having the opportunity to plan out a park like this. So it's a lot of fun for me.
What are some of those new uses of technology, engineering that you've seen that you say, wow, that's going to be something that we'd like to have in our park? And how do you make that decision about what's the right fit for the Six Flags brand?
The launch coasters, I think, are some of the newer things, and we have a couple of launch coasters. We introduced a launch coaster in 2019, Max Force. It's the second fastest launch in the world, 0 to 78 miles an hour in less than 2 seconds. And they said, we can give you the fastest launch in the world if you want it. That's how it was explained to us. So the fastest one is in Japan, I believe, and they've even represented that that's a little too intense. So we kind of backed off from there. So we have the second fastest in North America. Well, they have launch coasters now that are doing multiple launches within the ride course. So you can launch from the onset, and then within the ride course, you can launch again. Oh. So it allows the ride. Generally, roller coasters go up the lift, and then they let gravity take over. So these launch coasters allow them to do different maneuvers. So within the ride course, you can say hit a string of these launch motors that will let you propel in mid-ride course into different types of loops, different types of hills and lifts that gravity itself wouldn't allow you to do. So there's access coasters that are rotating on the track. So the vehicle that you're sitting in will spin around the track. We've got a wing coaster where you're sitting outside the track. So we had the world's first suspended looping coaster, Batman, where the track is over your head. So they have we've got wooden coasters that go upside down now because of this steel topper track. So things that you couldn't imagine just a few years ago, they're coming out with now that just keep pushing the envelope. So
Yeah, that sounds.
it's I'm not that design guy, the creative side. I think I mentioned to you I started in accounting. I'm more on the numbers side. So I leave the creativity out there, and my eyes just go big. And what are you talking about?
So when you decide to introduce a new ride, are you replacing an old ride? Are you expanding the park? How does that decision get made?
I love I love the duality. Here in Gurnee, we're generally landlocked. So we're kind of at a place now where if we are putting something in, we have to take something out to make that happen. So some of it has to do with the configuration of the ride. We can work with manufacturers to design something for space that we may have available. If we identify something that is maybe not as popular as it used to be, it may not be running as well as it used to be, and so it's time to go. So we can say, well, if that ride is not as popular with our guests, maybe there's something better we can do there. What space would that allow us? Reach out to the manufacturers and say, is there something you can do to work within that space? Can you design something for us? Um, as opposed to our park in St. Louis, which has a lot more space. So that gives us opportunity to kind of dream big and say, we've got area to work with. Now what? Now what do we need? What can we do there? And also, like I described, it is what do we have versus what's available. So if you have something like, for instance, the wing coaster that we have here, is that an experience that we have in St. Louis? And maybe we don't. So it's something. Let's take a look at it and see is that something that would work there. So what you can complement your existing. We're introducing this fall a kiddie coaster in St. Louis where they don't have that type of kiddie coaster. It's something that's a little bit more introductory. We have two coasters here in Gurnee that are kiddie coasters that kind of bring the young guests up, introduce the younger guests to the coasters, let them build up to a big raging bull. Whereas they have kind of a smaller coaster, but not that kiddie coaster down in St. Louis. So we needed that type of experience to bring the young guests in, get them on the kiddie coaster, and let them build up to the larger coasters. So all that planning, kind of what works, what they have, what a park doesn't have, to kind of make it all that broad guest experience, something that can appeal to the whole family, some guests of all ages.
So, in your time in this industry, John, tell us about what you have noticed, if there are any changes in what people expect now when they come to an amusement park or theme park. Has that changed during your career?
Yeah, I'd say it has. I think that there is a level of expectation of value. I think we get scrutinized quite a bit on what are they getting for their admission. Are they coming in on a multi-visit product on a season pass? Are they intending to come multiple times? What do they pay for a single day ticket? And then what are they getting for that? So that seems to be, and if it's recessionary pressure, if there's the competition for the entertainment dollars, that is a big piece of the feedback, it seems, for what I've paid for this experience. What is the return? How many rides did I get on? What was the food and beverage experience? So how long were the lines? So that expectation for what they were able to do on the day of their visit. So I think that is we get pressed on that. So we can introduce additional rides. We can introduce additional roller coasters. We're up to 17 roller coasters here in Gurnee.
Wow.
The charm of that is the more you have, the shorter the lines are for the other ones. So it just kind of spreads people out a little bit more. So I feel good about that. But the days of standing in line 3 hours for a roller coaster seem to be a thing of the past. Nobody wants to wait much for anything. It's a little bit more immediate. And I think that that's it. The shorter attention span, the willingness to wait in line for much has diminished. So that I think that immediate gratification, I want it, I want to do it, I want to do it now. So that's changed a bit. The food and beverage focus, I think, is quite a bit that we've been pressed for more variety, a little higher quality. I think the world of our food and beverage team. They stay on top of trends. They've introduced so many new products this year, and the feedback's been outstanding. Korean corn dogs. I've got my kids. I got to go home and ask my 18-year-old son, "You've heard of this?" And they have, and I said, "Great," So that helps me out tremendously because I'm like, okay. And then the guests react, and there's so much fresh product. You picture things at a theme park coming off of a truck and into a deep fryer and out off the counter, but I walk back into the back of house at our restaurants, and there's fresh vegetables and fresh meats and produce, and they're cooking in woks, and they're chopping up these vegetables and that, and it's the expectation is there that this is good quality food, and we're delivering, and it's exciting. But I think that's what's expected. It's not just chicken strips and pizza anymore. That it's a little higher quality, and we're charging the prices. Guilty, I got it. But if you're doing that, you can't just march out a frozen pizza out there. It's got to be better than that. So, and our food and beverage team is delivering. So those are, I think, living up to the guest expectations is required.
What is your off season like? When is that, first of all? And what do you try to achieve during the times when the park is closed? I guess if you call it an off season.
Yeah, that was my question. I think my wife would struggle to help me find that answer too, because I don't really know. The off season used to be a thing when there was a little bit of downtime, but it just seems to go on. We've found ways to kind of stretch the season a little bit. Fright Fest is really our most popular time of year. If I point to our highest attended days of the season, the top 5 highest attended days are during Fright Fest, almost without exception.
And Fright Fest, for those who don't know, is in October, right? It's on Halloween. Yeah.
That's the Halloween themed event, and Halloween has become such a popular holiday in our society now that that's when the guests, we stretch that to start in mid-September, and it just grows as we get closer to Halloween itself in October. And that's true at most all of our parks. It's particularly true in Gurnee and St. Louis, but that has allowed the theme park to stretch well beyond Labor Day into the end, and sometimes through past October into early November at times, depending on how the calendar shakes out. We dabbled here in the upper Midwest in Holiday in the Park, so that shortened the off season. Holiday in the Park was a holiday themed event. We ran that for 4 years, and it was tricky with the weather. It didn't really return financially like we had hoped. Difficult to run the rides in that cold weather, and I think separating the rides at a theme park from the theme park experience makes it challenging. When you naturally associate the roller coasters with the Six Flags brand, if that becomes less of that experience, even at a time in the winter, it makes it difficult to to sell that experience as well as you should. That's really the long and short of it, without getting much into the holiday in the park experience. But I know our guests enjoyed it. There was no bigger fan out there than me of Holiday in the Park. The park was beautiful. I thought it was decorated so well. The entertainment was outstanding. It just didn't get us where we needed to be financially to continue on with that, and we made a run. I think we're guilty of trying things and walking away from them a little too quickly at times, but we ran it 4 years. We mixed it up. We varied the pricing. We gave it a real strong run to see if we could make it work. But that was an opportunity to stretch into that off season, as you asked about, to get the business a little longer here. We have a number of parks that operate year round. We don't have that luxury here because of the Midwest weather. But we try and see what we can do to get the most out of the business. And then when we close, it's planning. We refurbish the rides. From the minute something closes for the year, we've got that in and working on it. We refurbish buildings. We work indoors when the weather doesn't accommodate that, and working on the ride vehicles, the trains. We're setting media budgets. We're doing all the planning, the ordering, and we immediately begin working on the next season. So I'd say that turns into more of a normal job, more of like an 8 to 7 job then. Mm-hmm. I think my 60 to 70 hour a week job turns into kind of a 50 to 60 hour a week job. So so off season, normalizes. I'm not here every Saturday and Sunday. So that's my off season, Monday through Friday only.
Okay. Off season for us, maybe never an off season for you and your family though. But
seems like it.
Well, hey, John, thank you so much for coming by and talking to us today on UWO Now. It's been good to meet you, good to see you, and it seems like you've got a dream job working in the amusement park and theme park industry. I see why you've been there for 30 years.
Thank you, Wendell. Yeah, I think I warned you. If you got me talking about theme parks, you'd have to end up cutting me off a little bit. I love it. I'm very passionate about it, if you can't tell in our brief conversation, but I appreciate the time as well. I had a great experience at Oshkosh. My son is going there in the fall. I'm so proud that he's followed. It's where I met my wife. It's where my son is going. So there's a lot that I hold dearly about Oshkosh and the campus.
Thank you, and thanks everyone for listening to UWO Now. Remember to catch the latest episode of UWO Now. Go to our WRST website, and you can also watch us on the UWO YouTube page. I'm Wendell Ray. Thanks so much for listening.